What's going on, everybody? It's Amster X back with another video, man, and I'm here to review Kagurabachi chapter 126. And honestly, I was really shocked by this chapter, and I know that he was on break for a little bit, and I actually was behind, so I was just catching up because the first. Let's just get into like the thoughts on Kagurabachi and as a whole is like in the beginning, I was one of those people who was like, part of the memes, like, is this really gonna be good? I'm reading and I'm reading and I'm like, this is good, but this doesn't just there's just no way this kid can just like it started off like Bleach. And I'm gonna say I saw that the Twitter discussion that Kagurabachi has a better chapter than the big first 100 chapters better than the big 3. And I'm going to be honest, it's up there with Bleach. I think Bleach has the best 100 chapters. I think that One Piece wouldn't survive today. Um, like if it were to come out, I stand by this belief that I don't think One Piece would exist today. Um, but I think Kagurabachi might be better than 100 chapters of Bleach. I'm gonna be honest. It's starting to take this turn, and I think in the grand scheme of things, where after we finish this flashback arc, right? I really hope we do another. I hope we take it even slower. Like this really has potential to be 500, 600 chapters. you know and the reason why I say that is if we go through this flashback arc, really take our time, but I feel like we're even kind of moving through it kind of fast. It's Hokazono's first series, and I know people are giving him his flack for his writing, and that's kind of why he went to straight action, action, action. And but so far, I mean, I feel like if he on the other side of this does like a fast forward, we're in the future a little bit. And my theory is that if have where Matsumoto, I can't remember Matsu, I'm calling him by his sword, Akametsu, is ruling for. Let's say he's already been ruling, because as we've seen, people they agree with his opinion on what he did in the island. That's why he's a hero. I mean, well, granted he was in prison, but he's like, man, I'm sane. And I think he's gonna turn everybody onto his side. He's gonna rule Japan, and I hope we do like a fast forward of like maybe like 20 years. Like honestly, like let's have him go, fight him when he's like late 20s or something. Like he's been underground or something. And the reason why I say that is because it's like we just saw this early he's going to fight, one of these legendary heroes in the first 100 chapters. Like I said, this is like this very Bleach-esque, right? Like we're talking about top tier Cap, where Bleach, Ichigo's fighting captains, and like come on, let's be real here. Like there was a lot of make believe stuff, and this is on the same. I mean, the first 100 chapters is legitimately copy paste from Bleach. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. And if we can just have him maybe take it down a notch, restart the series, I think this could end up as one of the best. I really do believe that, and I think we would look at the beginning as like, yeah, he was just having fun, thinking he could just conquer and then stop this evil, and then we really see that he has to go through his own trials and tribulations, kind of like how we see his dad does in this chapter. Now we're going to get into this chapter review. I mean, honestly, I'm taken aback. I think um Hokazono touched on some stuff here that um it seems almost like personal. Like I wonder which character he is in this story. Every manga artist or anybody who's created something always puts themselves in their characters, right? So I wonder if some of this stuff is true. I'm not saying necessarily his parents taking their lives or something. Obviously, I don't know anything about the author. His public life isn't made public. But I mean, some of the stuff is very personal. So we see this chapter starting off with Konoshige. We're seeing his father and his mother, and his dad used to beat his mom all the time. So much so that she almost goes blind, in both eyes. And you know later, he dies. A customer kills him, and his mother's like, don't be like that when you get older, right? And we see obviously he's not like that when he's older. He's very happy go lucky, just kind of just trying his best, right? And we see later that it's interesting that, she says, don't be like him when he gets older. But the chapter starts with his eyes, right? Like his dad loved his eyes. And we see in the previous chapter that Kunoshige has almost like, the Itachi eyes, the Sharingan eyes, where he's able to keep looking at a flame, and if his eye, his like almost like his retina in a sense, his it gets burned and it regrows stronger and stronger and stronger, um, and so we see that be a play on it. So even in this part about like this grief where he's saying like I was so focused on making sure my mom was okay that I didn't even really care about his death, his passing, and even he wasn't a bad person, and I feel like that's really relatable. I've dealt with grief, so I can definitely relate to that. So I'm like, oh, that's very specific, and then we see here later that the dad left money behind, so they were fine because she went blind in both eyes from the beatings. But then we said we have a callback to the earlier about she says, don't look at me like that, right? And he's like, Mom, please, like, I didn't even do anything. I'm just looking at you. But, like, it's because he has the same eyes, and that's why the dad was praising his eyes. So, she's so, almost has PTSD from the dad that, she can't even look at her son anymore, you know? And then we ultimately see that she takes her life. And I was like, damn, this chapter's like, what? Like, I was just like, what is going on? This chapter is so out of left field. It's not out of left field, but it is, I feel like he hasn't taking his time out. And I've seen the Twitter backlash like, oh, women are just used to, and it's like, no, I something about this chapter feels, it's not only that, it's that, the author just came off a break, and then we come back with this chapter. It almost feels personal. It feels as if, you know, he had something he wanted to say. He could have kept going with the last chapter, but he's trying to tell you, like, look at this is the backstory of why he feels so vindicated. Kunoshige has to save Chiaki, right? Like, this is her only friend, right? As we see in this later chapter, because as grief, he has no parents, he has no, he's like, yeah, I just was hanging out with these people, and that's real, and that's why I said this chapter is so so good, because it's like he's hanging out with these people because he just needs something to do, right? Something to pass the time, because he doesn't want to be alone and think about things, and then ultimately he's like, you know what? Wait, actually, these people are starting, they're starting to matter to me, right? And he's like, and that scares me because you don't want to lose them again, right? So that's real. So, and then you play that into what's happening now where, I should have put that panel in here from the last chapter where, Kunoshige is looking at Shiba like on the bed, and he's like, damn, I almost lost him. Like, and it's not really said. That's why he said like everything was told to me, and he's like, yo, it is a lot. I feel like that a lot was said without saying anything, and people may misinterpret those panels, but it's like, no, like, and now we get this chapter where he's like, you see him playing with Shiba at a young age, so he sees Shiba on his deathbed. You know what I mean? Like, how do you think that affects him? Where he's like, no, I'm not going to let anybody kill my friends. Right. So that's going to further, this is on some like Oppenheimer level of like, well, I'm going to build this nuke. Right. And that's what a lot of these Japanese stories, mangas always have some reference to this nuke. And that's kind of, obviously that's what these mythical blades are. Um, but then here we see this, I'm also, look, we see Chiaki here showing up, like making sure you're good, right? Like, you just fell off the face of the earth. We haven't heard from you in 2 weeks. And he's like, yeah, because that's how grief works, right? The minute you start to feel like, oh wait, I don't want to lose any of these people. Well, I'm just gonna separate myself from these people so I don't have to feel anything if I do lose them, right? So he's like, it's preemptively getting ahead of this grief. So that's just like a very well, I'm really surprised. I didn't know he had this in him. I think we kind of like peg this guy for creative panels, right? He's the fish hole, the key, through the key, through the door hole lenses, the reflections in water, all sorts of different ways he's portrayed fight scenes. But I thought this chapter was amazingly done to portray grief, and sorrow, sadness to connect it to his character overall. He's stunted emotionally. He's stunted. He's stunted. Of course, and then of course the son's going to be stunted because he's never told his son anything because he doesn't know how. He's like, I don't know what am I going to do to tell, and that's, we got to kind of forgive our parents there. And I think in that kind of shapes this whole story. That's why I really hope this next, after we get through this flashback, we really kind of slow down and peel these layers back. And I think that would then, like, I think we backtrack and rebuild the story up now with like a new lens on everything. And I think Kagurabachi can really solidify itself. So he says, I didn't know if it was really okay for everyone to have a guy like me around. And she's like, what do you mean? I want you around. And that's the way to preemptively get away from the grief. Like, people don't necessarily, I guess they feel your sadness, but so then you think like you're a burden. And he's like, I don't want to be a burden on everybody. But they're like, nah, bro, we're also all going through it. And that's what he says earlier. Everybody has their own story. We're all going through it, man. Like, we want you around. And we see like she makes food and he's crying and she's like, what the? And then like this panel was just beautiful, man. I mean, this panel was really beautiful. I was gonna put the next one in, but I don't like to have too many panels just for copyright issues. But like the artwork here, just like the way it's like blurry, it's motion, like the ink it's just to really capture this feeling of this happiness, this moment here, and how like it's almost like fleeting, right? And that's why he wants to hold on to Chucky as much as he can. But that's it for the 126 review. I thought this was brilliant. I really am, excited for this series, and seeing the direction he goes. Because so far, every time I'm like, he drops a banger. I can't lie. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This is Kagurabachi, chapter 126. Amster out.